Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm a fly fishing guide in Northwest Arkansas. And this is a video about the White River and hot fishing spots on the White River. And what you're looking at now is the map. There's roughly about 40 miles of river on the White, and it's all tailwater. And then the next two charts are about the fish distribution from the last big study that was done on the White in 2024. As you can tell, there's a healthy group of brown along with rainbow. And the White is a great river with lots of big fish, and people tend to fish up near the dam, but what you'll see, there are other places that are good as well. Next, let's talk a little bit about generation. It is tailwater. It is dangerous. So be sure you use that number that I just circled to know what the generation level is going to be. And at 700 CFS, that is the minimum flow. And you can use the USACE app to understand that. But also note, there are many, many places that the water is only about 12 inches deep when it's at that flow. Now, here are some suggestions in terms of dealing with generation, and that will help keep you safe. Equipment. I use normal equipment. It doesn't have to be really expensive. I have a 9-foot 5-weight TFO rod. I use typically 6X during the middle of the day and 5X tippet. And these are flies by season that I've found to work well. And all of these flies, you can find recipes on my YouTube channel, Fly Fish Cookbook. And then the next chart is just another view of those flies as well. Most of these are nymphs. Most are related to the midge category. And what you'll find in the White River is it is very, very productive for midge and woolly buggers. Now, this chart is another view of the same, or mostly the same flies. And so the one I'll highlight here is I fish a lot with the Spanish bullet and the ruby midge. Now, these are different types of rigs. And this particular rig is a dropper. I just about always fish a dropper rig. And then if fishing a woolly bugger, sometimes if the water is high, I'll put a weight below it and almost fish it like a drop shot. But when you're fishing along in high water, you want to fish the sides of the river, and that's where the fish will hang out. Next, we have Euronymphing. That's basically drop shotting on steroids with multiple flies. And if you're good and have lots of experience, that can be very productive, particularly if you're going to straight line your rig. Now, this example drift is how when I'm drifting in my boat and fishing, I'll fish this way. What I'll do is I'll cast out, let the line drift, and then when I see it move, I'll lift. And it needs to have a natural drift. It needs to have some slack, but not too much, because you need to be able to set the hook like you see in that picture when you lift your rod. And I'll have some more examples of catching fish and what to do a little bit later in the video. And as you can see, in this particular case, I'm fishing pretty deep, generally 4 to 6 feet deep, and under a strike indicator. And that's probably how I fish at least 90% of the time, unless I'm going for browns along the side of the river. And as you can tell, I fish a lot by drifting, and I have oars that I use to control. Now let's talk about the dam. The Bull Shoals Dam area, and this is just below the dam. And actually, this was recently. And see, there is a sandbar on that other side, about 100, 200 yards below the dam, that the fish tend to stack up below that sandbar. And here's a picture of a young female eagle that I took there at Wildcat Shoals. So lots of beautiful work. And then wildlife. And then what you can see here, here's an example of reeling in the fish. Notice I'm keeping my rod tip up high. I'm not letting any slack in the line. And I'm using a long net to retrieve the fish. Now we're going to motor to the White Hole, and this is floating from White Hole down to Craner's Lodge. This is a nice place to fish. You'll look now, in that case I was motoring upriver. Now we're going downriver, and you'll fish along the left-hand side. And in this case, this happens to be low and slow water. So you can see we're actually moving, but boy, we're not moving very fast. And in this case, it looks like I've got just a little bit too much slack in my line, so that if I lift it, okay, it's gonna have a hard time setting hook. Now, when I move, what I do is I lift my line up off the water. I'll pop the tip back to 1 o'clock, load the line going forward, and have it fleeing forward. And what you see there, I just missed a fish because I had too much slack. So that's real world. And particularly for new fly fishermen, that is one of the biggest problems I see when I take folks out. And we just missed another one. I actually waited a little too long before I set that one. So here we go. I'm lifting the line up, flinging it out straight. It's an easy cast. It doesn't have to go a long way. 15 or 20 feet is fine. And what you'll notice, if you notice, I'm fishing literally about 15 feet off of the bank. And then you can see in that circle, that's where the fly is. So next we're going to go down to the Buffalo City access, and here's what it looks like. The accesses look quite a bit alike, and what we're going to do is you can put in at Buffalo Access, motor upriver to the one position, and then you'll float down that left side, very similar to what we did in the other places. And what you'll notice is you'll want to fish on the next to the shore that is on the outside of the curve of the river, or where the deeper channel is. And I have those marked in these particular locations. And so go up to position 1 right below the shoal, and you'll fish that. That's where the midges are going to come off the shoal. Particularly once it warms up a little bit in the morning, and then also in the late evening. And then you'll fish with that same setup with a dropper. A Spanish bullet with a ruby midge is a good way to start with that, about 4 to 6 feet deep, and then drift along with the current and just keep fishing that same rig down the left side through position 2 down to position 3. And you can switch up by casting to the other side of the boat if you want, but I tend to fish along that left side, still 15 feet or so off of the bank, and that's a pretty good bet for your first pass. And so we'll drift down to position 3, which is right there at the access. And then the river, what we're going to do is move over to the right, because there's a left turn in the river, and we're going to fish that deeper portion along that right-hand rock wall. And you can see I've got some arrows there pointing it out. Then you'll drift down to just before the stop signs at position 5. And you're going to want to turn around and go back, because that water is real shallow. And also, if you're not familiar with motoring in tailwater, you don't want to go through there when it's high as well. So turn around, motor back up in the channel, back up to that shoal at the top, and drift down and catch fish. The fish aren't counting how many times you go up and down. So now we just moved to Rim Shoals. There are 2 channels in Rim Shoals. One is on the inside of the curve and one is on the outside. kind of the same thing. We'll put in at rim shoals, we'll motor up to the shoal, and then float down in the channel, and we'll fish the sides, generally speaking, starting out. And fishing with the same setup we talked about a minute ago. Now, let's talk about wildcat shoals. Wildcat, we're going to put in at the access. Guess what? We're going to motor upstream up to the shoal. You're going to stay on that far left-hand side as you motor up the river, really only about 10-15 feet off the docks. And that water is shallow during minimum flow. It's only about 12 inches deep, and it's common to hit the bottom with the gravel. Now, when you get up to the top, you're going to motor up to position 1. You'll notice there are a couple of, there's a tree you can see right there at position 2, and then there's an underwater tree where I have in that picture there, and then here's a picture of catching a fish there. And notice we're below the shoal there, so the water is just a little bit more shallow, and I wasn't fishing those holes that I indicated. Next, when we're drifting down, we're going to drift down by the boathouses. There's grass or nacrest along that way, so you'll fish just on the inside of the nacrest where the water's clear and your line won't hang up. And there are lots of fish that hang in that grass, and they'll pop out and you'll catch fish. That's a good place to go, particularly in the afternoons. And then we'll fish on down to position 5, position 6. That water gets a little deeper there, particularly along that outside curve. And so you'll want to fish deeper, and there are also tons of fish holding in that particular area. Notice I've got the circles there indicating where the fish is. This is actually a pretty nice fish I've got on in this particular video. And that's what you'll notice. The fish are generally, I'd say, around 14 to 16 inches. I catch a lot of rainbows and some brown. I've caught up to 24-inch brown, and there are people, they'll catch 30, 34-inch brown, particularly up closer to the dam or around Cotter and the bridge. So I'm having to fight this one just a little bit. And notice again, keep your rod tip up, keep the pressure on the fly so it doesn't come loose. Now, this is called Quarry Park. I camp here literally every month. It's on the North Fork River, right by the North Fork Dam. This is a rare time when there literally was no one in the park because we had just had 8 inches of snow when I filmed this. In fact, you can still see some of the snow on the bank over there. All the Corps of Engineers campgrounds are great, so you'll enjoy them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been helpful, and you be safe out there. And you can also check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, Fly Fish Cookbook. Thank you.